And what's that one?
YouTube. So this one you have to sit right in.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll be here anyway.
That's 6 o'clock.
Right, we'll get started in a minute. We're just setting the cameras up for those who have joined. Just setting up on different channels.
Is your microphone?
Set the microphone. No, just turn it on. That's all right. Yeah, all good.
Perfect.
Okay, great stuff. Right, we are good to go. So tonight I am doing some session planning. I'm just going to freestyle it a bit really, go through a load of sessions, all linked with playing through the thirds. We're going to start doing this once a month, based on our monthly topic, and then what people can do. So like, whenever I'm coaching or tutoring, we get loads of people saying, oh, what would you do for this? What would you do for a session like this? So as any questions come through, I can just answer them live, maybe show you a session, give you an idea. I do my best. It's quite relaxed, quite laid back. You can hear we've got a one-to-one session going on downstairs as well. So Coach Harry's quite loud. Hear him shouting. That is Harry down to a T. So playing through the thirds. First thing I'll talk about with this, if I'm going to just kind of go into some small-sided games and keep it quite simple at the start, I'm currently working with under sevens. So we've only got 4v4 at training anyway. 4v4 at training is probably the lowest numbers I would start working on actually splitting the pitch into thirds. Because then when we play our little matches, I can easily have a goalkeeper and a player in each third, so I can start to teach some depth. But by this I can't teach too much width. So normally, if I've only got that amount of players, and it's with smaller groups, instead of playing through thirds, I'm probably just trying to teach them the basics of getting some depth. So actually I'll probably just split the pitch in half and say, can we always have a player in each part of the pitch? And I'll just play a small-sided game like that. I wouldn't knock anyone into zones or halves or anything like that, because I want rotation. But actually, if we're playing through the thirds, one of the things we need is some depth. We need players making sure that we've got width and depth, so that we've got a forward option and can play forward when we can. So if you're working with younger ones, 7s, 8s, you might just split the pitch in half. Once you get kind of enough players to probably do a 5v5 rather than 4v4, one of the easiest ways to teach playing through the thirds, one of the best things to always do, is just have your pitch split into thirds. Whether that's with a double cone here, or flat spots across the line, or you can cone across the line if you want, but you just don't want to use too many cones. But it's just a nice, simple, small-sided game that I would use it all the time and put different variations onto this small-sided game where I would be saying to them, first of all, so if we're 7 versus 7, for example, so I've got 2, 3, 1, attacking that way for the blues, and I might play a 2-2-2 for the reds. Nice and simple one way to do it is, small-sided game, if you score, but you haven't got a player in every third of the pitch when you score a goal, the goal doesn't count. And what that makes players do is even when the reds are attacking down this way, shall we say, and they're all ball forward, it teaches one player to start thinking about, well, what if we lose the ball? What about transition? So a simple way to do that then, like I said, if you score a goal and you haven't got a player in every third of the pitch, not including the keeper, goal doesn't count. What you can also do, if you want to, you can change these rules depending on the age group you're at and what you want to teach your players, but what you could say is, the the goal doesn't count unless all the players are in these 2/3 of the pitch and the goalkeeper is on the line. Because what you're teaching them then when you're attacking is you want the goalkeeper high to be like a sweeper keeper. So that's one way of doing it, a simple way. If you're going to use a relate type of task, it might just be try to have a player in every third of the pitch when you're in possession. And then when you're out of possession, you should have a player, your player should be in 2/3 of the pitch, whether that's there or these 2/3. So that's the simplest version. Another small-sided game you can do is you have to play through every third of the pitch. Now there's different ways you can do this. You can say, to play through the thirds, it has to be a pass into the next third. Takes away their ability to dribble and run with the ball. It will force them to pass a lot more. Or you can say you can dribble or pass into the next third, but the ball has to be played through every third of the pitch before you can score. That does also mean as players get older and develop more power, you can give them the opportunity to play into a striker, to set back to someone into midfield as well. Because there's probably a bit of snobbery about you shouldn't go from there to there with a pass. I don't agree with that personally. If it's a controlled pass into that player's feet to set off, brilliant. So they've got to play through every third before they can score a goal. The issue you get with that is if someone wins it up here, so let's say the red player has just won the ball here, you're not going to be happy if that red player then turns around and goes all the way back to the keeper and starts to play through the thirds again. So you can put the rule in that if you win the ball in the top third, you're allowed to score straight away, because that rewards a high press, teaches realistic decisions about the player up here. If you win it, can be attacked quickly. So that's just a couple of really simple, small-sided games you can use to introduce the topic, the understanding of width and depth, etc., etc. Now, what we can do from there is start to break this down into zones and think about what players need in each zone. So if we then say, right, we're going to work on playing out from the goalkeeper. So it's still playing through the thirds, but we're going into more detail now about playing out from a goalkeeper. Our goalkeeper will have a lot more focus on using the ball. Okay, so our goalkeeper might be a big focus here, as well as a couple of defenders and a midfielder. This is the ball. You might have just a 4v3 practice in here. And what I would do is we're trying to play from the goalkeeper. I would section off the area here. And this will be dependent on the age group you coach. So if you're coaching under 18s, that is, you would set this around that penalty area. If you're coaching under 9s, your penalty area is obviously a lot smaller. So I'll still go roughly from the edge of the penalty area, maybe slightly wider, out, probably 10 yards outside the area. So that will be your playing area. And I would, if you're playing out, I would always give multiple options of areas to play through. So I'm creating three, different colour pen, 3 goals for them to play through, made by the green cones. So you can use just little gates, use different coloured cones. So there's goal 1, goal 2, goal 3. So the reds have got a 4v3 overload. I always make the keeper be the extra player to give you that overload. And it's nice and simple. All the reds have got to do is try and get through one of these goals by dribbling or passing through one of these goals. And this gives you a lot of focus on the goalkeeper playing to defenders, and these players combining to try and get out of this part of the pitch. So what will naturally happen is the ball will come out here. If that player's pressed, you've got to work on this player being comfortable dealing with the ball under pressure. If you're under pressure, deal with it, look to play it back. Once you play it back to your goalkeeper, the goalkeeper can then be patient on the ball. So your goalkeeper can score in one of these goals by passing it through. Now, depending on the ability levels of your players, if you think that's too hard for your goalkeeper to do, this is where you might think about the equipment you're using, and you might make these samba goals or smaller goals rather than a gate that you've got to dribble through. Because the keeper will then look, if they can, to play passes direct through there. And it's great if your goalkeeper can do that in a match, because if you're high pressed up here and the strikers are pressing against your defenders aggressively, if you can cut them out and play straight into a midfielder, that's a great goalkeeper. It'll do really well for you in games. When this happens, naturally now what will happen is defenders will think he's just going to knock it through there, or she's just going to knock it through to those goals, so we need to sit off. That will now create the opportunity for play short, and now this player's spare on the ball. If someone comes to press, can we now look to combine, maybe a 1-2, to get out and score through the goal? Now, you can then work on loads of different variations in here, loads of different combinations to try and get out. You could make it that it's worth more points to go through the middle, depending on what you want your team to achieve, or you could say, right, you can either dribble or pass through any of these goals or gates. But if you're saying, right, I want my defenders to get better at carrying the ball and stepping into space, then give them 3 points for being able to drive through it and encourage that. If you want your defenders to get better at passing forward and breaking lines, offer them 3 points for passing through the gate instead of encouraging them to dribble. So this is a nice one to start for just playing out from the goalkeeper and with a focus on that goalkeeper. Right, ready for me to go on to the next bit? Ready?
Sounds good.
Yeah, right, so that is playing out for the goalkeeper here. The next stage will be playing, really splitting this into thirds, playing from the defensive third into the midfield third. That's what we've got to look at now. Right, we've worked on playing out from here. Can we play defensive third into the midfield third? I would say now you start to use a bit more width in your practice, because one of the ways we're going to play out is by using the fullbacks, by splitting the pitch wide to create space and some 1v1 centrally. Now, I'll have my goalkeeper in. So I always think about, right, set this up as a pitch, and what does a pitch look like? So if we've got 2-3-1 there, and then let's just match up formations. 2-3-1 versus 2-3-1. We're probably going to have a little bit of an overload here, and it's going to be really tight in here. So I might now keep these parts of the pitch in. So I will go here, again, cutting this part off, because it's 2v1. This is where you can be clever and creative. 2v1 in there, if I give these two the full width of that pitch, this player is just doing doggies and running and running and running and getting really frustrated. So now what I might do is actually open this up here. And now, again, I'm probably going to go for my 3 or 4 gates. I would normally encourage, if you've got 3 players here, so 3 defenders, I would always go 1 extra gate or goal. The reason being, that encourages them to be compact where the ball is. So from a defensive perspective, so we're only also using up to here at the minute. From a defensive perspective, if the ball comes over this way, these players will shut off the nearest 3 gates and leave the furthest one. From an attacking perspective, if you spread out wide, you know they can only cover 3 gates, and if you move the ball quickly, you can then play through there. Like I said, I would cut these zones off. These are no-go zones, to make it harder for the defenders to get on the ball and try and play out. So this game is, ball starts with the goalkeeper. Can we get through one of these 4 gates by, again, passing through it or dribbling through it? Doesn't really matter. You can adjust that based on what you want to get out of it. So if they leave one up pressing, you're going to work on quality of pass into the defender. If they're spread out like that, that defender wants the ball so they can open their body and receive it on their back foot so they can go forward quickly. If it's a bad pass, if the pass comes this side of them, or it's a slow pass that allows that player to get enough pressure on. So it's got to be a solid pass out there so they can open their body up and look to play forward by either driving with the ball or playing another pass quickly. The other team now might go quite aggressive on the press. And if they do that, you've now got the overload in here. So when you've got the overload in here, you would expect a little bit of movement, maybe this player to come in here to receive. Now there's a real important thing here, if you ever get players dropping here to receive with the goalkeeper. there's this line, paint an imaginary line between the defenders. And anyone that's seen me tutor, I always say, imagine the two defenders are holding a pane of glass. The two defenders are holding a pane of glass between them. Now, you do not want to run through the pane of glass as a player. That's going to hurt. But the ball should break the pane of glass. So if this player comes here and the ball breaks the pane of glass, this is breaking lines, these two defenders are completely taken out of the game now. If you come here to receive it by breaking the glass yourself, we play it there, this defender can get back involved in the game. So work on these players about coming in here. Now you can also think about rotation. If someone's wanting to mark them, maybe they'll get out, someone else will go in. They'll start thinking about their positioning. So the goalkeepers and these players are comfortable under pressure, because we've worked on that in the previous session or the previous week. We're now working on what's the next bit and how do we get out into here. So that's another session you can use for that part. A way you might, so everything we've done has been overloaded, to be fair. Now you might, to make it really hard, if you put another blue in there, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5v5 out here. That was a 2-person overload, so that's probably a bit too easy. So let's actually make it a full and include the keeper as this. So now we've got six blues defending against 6 reds. So actually, if someone, once that ball is played, wants to press aggressively on the keeper, this is going to make it really difficult for your players to now play out. If you've got adults, 14s and above, maybe match it up like this to make it more and more difficult. But what I would say, if you're ever going to go full pressure like this, 6v6, and so it's going to be really difficult for the team playing out, the other team have got the option to really press aggressively. If you ever give the option to press aggressively, you have to give the team playing out the option to also go long. Because their decision making has got to be, we want to combine, we want to play short, we want to encourage the blues to come in. But if you're playing out from the back and doing that, you're doing it because you want to create space up here. So if you drag everyone in here so you create space up here, there needs to be the option that you can bypass these and go up to this player. So I would have, especially if you've got 2 goalkeepers, someone playing in this square. So what the goalkeeper or any defender gets the option of, they can score in one of these gates. So for this practice, I would take this gate out and I would take that gate out. They can score by driving or passing through one of these gates, or they can score by passing into this player. Now if it's a goalkeeper, you can allow them to catch the ball as well. If it's just an outfield player, they've got to control it in the square. So it's got to be a good enough pass, but when they control it, they then play it straight back into the other team who get to attack the goal. So just coming back for every session we've just talked about now, if the Blues ever win it, they need motivation. So if they ever win the ball, they get to attack the goal. Don't forget about defending the team's motivation. You need them to do a good job for you. So let them attack the goal if they win it. So this practice now, what should happen if they're defending well, if these players start all pressing and they notice we're then just clipping it over here and playing the easy pass, they've got to think about covering a little bit as well. So if this player starts dropping in spaces here, this player can't go with them because they'll just clip it, and that's more dangerous. So actually that player's got to think, and now it gives your players opportunities to start picking up little pockets of space and using rotations to try and find different bits of space for us to play out. So this will focus a lot more on the positioning and movement of these midfield players. Okay, so we've gone goalkeeper to defence, defence to midfield. Now we'll start thinking about midfield playing into the forwards. So I'm just going to run through this one and then I'll see if there's anything been asked after this. And I'll keep freestyling, as you can tell, I can talk. So we'll be fine here, plenty to go through. So now I'm working with the Blues. We're going to go from midfield into our forwards. And let's now mix up the formation. Let's go like we're a 4-3-3. Or we'll go a 4-2-3-1. Like that. That's our formation, 4-2-3-1 against 4 and 3. Okay, So this is the aim of the session. So the ball will now start here because I'm working with the blue team. So I'm going to split the pitch off here. Obviously I need my midfield and my attacking zones in. So I'll still put that third of the pitch in. Now we need to encourage a lot of width from the attacking team whenever we're working on stuff like this. So what I'm going to give is the Reds 2 goals, like 7-a-side Samba goals, that they can score in. So that's what the Reds are trying to do. They've got to win the ball and score in one of those. The coach will start the practice from here with a set of footballs, and he's going to play in, or she'll play in, to the attacking team, who've basically got to just try and score a goal. So this is a little bit more like what we call a phaser play. So the pitch is set up, and it's acting like this is what happens in this area of the pitch. I would put in this line to show the final third, but no one's locked into zones. I'll use it as a reference point. Now we're probably working with older players as well. Get an assistant, get a parent, get a sub to do the offsides. Whenever you're working the final third with players that play offsides, do offsides. If you're working with younger players, don't worry about it, your pitch will be quite small anyway. So you have to do offsides. The coach will start the practice with the ball, and the aim is basically, we have to combine to try and score. Now what I would work on, let's talk a bit more detail about coaching points on this one, because I'm going a bit more advanced, is positioning of each player. So can my 9 occupy the 2 centre backs? Can my 9 occupy both of them, rather than go and stand just on one all the time, unless you've got a player that is very good at holding the ball, shielding the ball and spinning. But can they try and occupy the centre backs? Even if they are going to go and pin on one, I don't want them to do that too early. It's only when we're looking to play into them. Because if they do it too early, if they stay out a little while, they can occupy both centre backs and make it harder for them. I want width from my wider players, unless you want your wider players inside. In the half space, then you'd ask them to come in here between the centre back and full back. Then you would need width provided by, in this practice, what would be one of your midfielders making an outside run. In your real games it might be a full back, but we don't want to go too complicated. So I've been working on, you occupy the 2 centre backs, you 2 get width, and now what we've got to try and do is combine. Now, an ideal situation is not to have the coach starting the practice. If you've got the extra player, an extra player here who acts as a bounce player or a target player that can't be tackled. So this gives you the freedom to play out when you need to play out. You don't want too much pressure on the attacking team. You want them to be patient and be able to get on the ball and look for rotations and movement. Another way you can do this is by putting this player in here to actually give you the overload. But again, depending on the ability levels of your players, you may have a zone here which is a no tackling zone. So if one of your players is under pressure here or is in trouble, one of your attackers can drop in there and receive the ball. And no one can come in and tackle. And now what happens is everyone can get organised a bit, they can take a breath, start organising themselves and start thinking about how they're going to do it. And it comes down to what age they are, what ability level they are. If they're ready for full pressure all the time, don't worry about this, but if you need to graduate the pressure and not be too difficult too often, like straight away, just put a zone in here where they can drop off and have a bit of time and space. Then I'll be working on positioning, like I said, width. From here, it's then movement to create space. There's 2 different things about creating space. Are you creating space as a team? You do that first, like creating width, depth. If players drop off, you've got spaces to come into as well. Once you create space as a team like that, each person needs to work on making space individually. So now this player might go away from the ball to then move towards it so they can get on the ball and receive and open their body shape out. It might be that they have some rotation. So the blue one comes out here to receive it, that blue one comes in here, they might swap over, just trying to get a couple of yards so that they can receive to play forward into these players. It may also be, can we go overload one side of the pitch by shuffling over like this to encourage all these players to come over? Can we do this so that we can then isolate over here? So if I've got, this is my star player who loves a 1v1 and will beat every player 1v1, can we start working on a combination where we play 2 or 3 passes in here so that we can then go out where this player is now 1v1? Because this one's occupied both centre backs. When this happens, you're 1v1. If this player then comes out to cover, you've got a 1v1 in there where you can play in someone's feet, and then you get runners going onto the ball. So this is a bit more complicated. It's a bit more like a phaser play. It's working with players probably staying in the positions that they're playing during the game. That's structure for older players. If I'm going to do it for younger ones, again, I like to do something which will have a lot of transition in it. And I'm a big fan of, this will be the coach starting the practice, I'm a big fan of you have to earn the right to play. I think younger players, and football players in general, can have a tendency to put loads of effort in when they're attacking. They'll be a bit lazy when it comes to transition to defending, especially in training. So the way I play this game is when the Reds have got out and scored twice, you swap. So now the Reds get to attack the big goal, the Blues have to try and break out. If it takes the Blues 20 minutes, it takes them 20 minutes. It takes them 2, it takes them 2. But when we play in this practice, only the goals in the big goal count. So if the Blues have scored 4, and then they swap over, and then the Reds score 2 in the big goal, it's then 4-2. The goals in the little goals don't count. So now we've covered playing from the goalkeeper to defence, defence from midfield, midfield to attack. And if you now go back into what we talked about originally, where you've got your pitch split into thirds, they should now be better in each aspect of that. So if you go back to that small-sided game, where the pitch is split into thirds and you've got to play through them, they should have had some exposure or experience of playing through each zone, so they should be getting better at doing that. Rui, anything come up?
We have had a question, we may have gone over it already, but the question is about playing out from the build-up play from the back. So someone's asked, my team likes to build up from the back. What drills would you recommend to improve this?
Okay, so what I would say, we've gone through it a little bit, so what I'll do is I'll expand in having loads of practices where the goalkeeper is involved. So if you're doing keep ball practices or possession-based practices, I've done everything game related, but actually it's really simple, and this is where we make football very complicated. I might set up a square like this, and let's say my yellows are my goalkeepers. They're the target players in this practice, and I'll have a 2 versus 2 in here. And what I'll do is I'll play in 1 minute blocks, and all they've got to do is get from target player to target player with the ball. So there to there, and they do that, they get a point, and then the red keep the ball and they try and go back the other way. If these target players, for example, your goal, this applies everywhere over the pitch. So I've talked about them at the moment, the goalkeepers, these could be centre backs. This could be a central defender, these could be the 2 midfielders that they're trying to play through. This could be midfielder, strikers. The combinations that they'll learn in here apply across the whole pitch. But it's not just, right, that's an easy practice and easy to set up. But what are you coaching in it is the next question. So what I would coach in this is a very simple solution to trying to play out. So we're working the Blues now. If they spread out like this and create an angle, if the ball comes out here and they're marked tight, if the ball goes back at pace, 1 touch ideally, you then break the line and play through straight away. So if you're tight and pressed, up, back, through. Then what will happen is, these players here that are defending will try to cut that off. So when you come out, even if it's the first pass, you open up on your back foot and you play forward. If you do that quickly, and I'll come on to the technique now I suppose, because playing out from the goalkeeper and to play forward, it's vital we get our technique right. So I'll stand in front of the board. So I want to play over there and the ball's coming from over there. I need to get my body in a shape where I can see both. So if you look now, where I've opened my body up a little bit, I can see where the ball's coming from and where it's going without actually turning my head. I can see it in my field of vision. If I stand like this, I've got to fully turn my head to see where I want it to go, and by the time I fully turn my head and the ball's travelling, someone might be able to get pressure on me. So I want my body in a position where I can see both. Now when the ball comes out to me, I want it played to my back foot so I can open my hips and take my first touch forward. Now your goalkeeper needs to learn that skill, because when it's coming from there, open your body up to switch play, see both sides of the pitch. Your defenders need to learn that skill, so when they're receiving from the goalkeeper, they can receive and play out to the fullback, into the midfielder, or be aware of everything and go longer or set it back. So simple practices like this with lots of repetition are really important in small, high tempo bursts, but it's then working on the skill of can you receive on your back foot, can you receive under pressure, and then can you be composed under pressure as well. All good?
All good. Do you want to do one more question now?
Yeah, go for it.
We have another question which is from an under-9s coach of how can I introduce the concept of playing out from the back for my under-9s. This may have been the drill you just did, but...
Yeah, that's fine. So I would do stuff like that with under-9s and start 1v1. So actually, do this. There's your square. 1v1. Ooh. That one's injured. 1v1 and trying to learn to receive and play forward. I think what's really important with under-9s is not putting them up under too much pressure straight away. So this might be where we say, right, we're going to play let's go 3v3. We're going to play a 3v3 game, like this. And it's going to be, can you get into the other team's end zone with the ball? So I'll set up a pitch like that, and each team has an end zone. So what we want to do is try and get to our player in that end zone. So I'll make it a 4v4. So what I wouldn't start with a player. Let's start it like this. There's 3 ways to do this session. But what you don't want is a huge amount of pressure on players at the same time when they receive the ball, especially at under-9s. They need that little zone. So when the Reds are attacking that way, give them the no tackling zone. So you're trying to get the ball into that zone. And the way that it works, you can either dribble with the ball into the zone, like that, or a player can pass to a player in the zone. Just give them freedom about what they want to do. But when you've got the ball in your own defensive zone, the defenders cannot come in there to get the ball off you. So what this will do is give them a little bit of breathing space and a little bit of time to just drop off and think, right, I'll gather my thoughts, and now these players can think about movement, because they're going to take longer to react to what you want them to do. So they can score by dribbling into there or passing into there. You can then progress that to say, they can dribble out of here, by the way, if they want to. Because if we're teaching them to play it from the back and everyone drops off, we've got to say to them, right, come on, step out. If they've all dropped off, you step out and go into space until someone presses you, and then look to play the pass. Be aware that when they step out, sometimes they might lose it. If you then criticise them for it, they won't do it again. So think about, right, when they step out, if they lose it, coach them. And coach the players around to support as well. So they're going to score by dribbling or passing instead. You can then progress it to, you can only get in there to receive a pass. And you'll start to practice through balls now. So they'll play a through ball, you can't be in there till the pass is made, and that also starts teaching about timing of their runs and offsides. So that's what I would say for the younger ones, give them that little bit of space there so that they can't be tackled by letting them drop into that end zone. Or you can do it with target players, but instead of, the reason I have zones like this where you can drop into it is because if they don't want the target players and they want to be aggressive and go in there and be confident, they can still do that. So that's one that can work with the younger ones. Another fun one with younger ones to stop them just smashing the ball. So when we want teams playing out from the back, we want them being composed and playing, even if they're under pressure, being composed and relaxed on the ball. So whenever there's a goal, players can have a tendency to just smash it in the goal. And at under nines, what you'll have is players that are really strong, some that are physically not developed yet. So I would play simple possession game where we'll have a target player that they can play out to when they're under pressure. I've made that too thin. You'll need some width for this one rather than being too thin. So a little possession game like this, 3 versus 3. They can play out to this player who's free. You could say that this is the same player for a minute and then you swap. You could say as long as you've got one player out there, that's okay, because actually that one could step in and that one could then rotate back out. But instead of goals, have 4 cones with a football on top. And now, to score a goal, they have to knock a football off. Now you can go even more, you can go further with this and say, first team to knock all 4 footballs off from the other team is the winner. But now, what they're learning is, they've got to play forward with control and be composed on the ball. What also happens is if you lose the ball, they've got a really small target to hit. So there's a bit less pressure on when they make those mistakes. One way I might change that, I've just decided I'll change this session because I didn't do that perfect. I can improve all the time. Put the ball on the goal 3 or 4 yards past the line, not on the line. Because otherwise they'll dribble right up to the line and just smash it. Even when they come up to here, they've still got that little bit of pressure of, can you knock the ball off the cone? Okay, anything else, Rory? Chuck something at me if you want.
We've got one more question on here, which is, do you have any sessions that teach quick transitions from midfield to attack?
I do, but I'm going to take a minute to think about that one.
While you're thinking, do you want to let people know where they can find out more information about the Coaches Club?
So, we're at TSC Coaches Club. We are on all social media channels, so YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and on Patreon is where we do our paid stuff. So we have loads of free stuff that we give out, as well as our website, tsccoachesclub.com, and loads of free stuff we give out. And then for those that want us to give you a bit of extra or do your weekly session plans for you, we do that on Patreon when we send you the session plans each week. We've also launched a Grassroots to Greatness podcast, which is on Spotify, Apple and YouTube. That's going really well, so get on there, some really good interviews on there already, as well as some bits of me just talking through my coaching journey and stuff like that. Okay, right, midfield to attack and transition. So, if we are working on transition, it's key that we have to win the ball. So, I'm working with the red team. So we don't start with the ball. The blue team will start with the ball. Sounds simple, but it's a mistake a lot of people make. So, the blue team have to score by dribbling through these goals or passing into the target player. So this is I'll use this as the ball, but this is the target player. There we go. So the blues will play out, the reds are trying to win the ball and score as quickly as they can. Okay? But the blues are trying to score it in these goals or by playing it into the target player. Now, if a blue, they can only dribble through these goals, they can't pass. That's what I'm going to say now. And when they dribble through, if they can then play the ball straight into the target player once they get through, which is simulating a cross, so that player breaks through that, their next touch has to be a cross into the target player. Okay, and you can put something in there that they've got to do it before they reach your line. They play that into the target player. Anytime the ball goes to the target player, it starts the red team's attack straight away. So they play to the red. The blues play into the target. Whenever the target player gets it, they play to the red team. So what happens now, by encouraging the blues to have to drive out of these areas, it means someone's come forward and they've simulated losing the ball. And now we're going to work on the transition to react quickly to try and score whilst they're out of balance because this player's now come forward. So I would put something in place like that where they have to drive through a gate and then the practice will start again straight away for the red team, and then work on, the coaching points I'm looking for are, can you play forward quickly? Now that's either finding your best furthest forward pass, or it's driving forward with the ball yourself to attack space. So the ball's come here, we've won it, play, in there. Now what can you do? At the moment, they're under pressure, they're under pressure, they're under pressure. I would say you drive with the ball, because either someone's got to come out to deal with you, and if someone then comes out to deal, or they've got to leave you. Someone comes out to deal with you, and then look at, can we play out wide and play and try and score. What you can do then to reward the Reds even more, if you want to, so they've created this, but you can either use a restriction or a reward. So if it's a restriction, you could say, when the ball comes out from a target player, you have 8 seconds to score. That's it. If they don't score within 8 seconds, the Blues start with the ball again. Or if you want to be more generous, you can use a reward of, if you score in 8 seconds, excuse my writing, if you score in 8 seconds, it's worth 3. Because that way, if it takes longer than 8 seconds, and they score, it's only worth 1, but they've got the reward for attacking quickly, if it's worth that, it could be worth 3. I've got one more thing to go through unless there's anything, Rui?
Nothing else come through at the moment.
Right, so one more thing to go through is thinking about combination play. So if I sat here and went through all the different types of combinations and ways you could play forward, combine in midfield or get width, we'd be here all night and the battery will run out on everything we've got running. But if we can just drip feed ideas into players' heads and challenges into their heads about how they do it. I'm starting this as 7-a-side rather than 11 because it's in the middle really of what people play. 7-a-side can teach all the principles that you need for 11. 2 different challenges, and you might do these across the whole pitch. If you want to focus on just the midfield, or you want to focus on the attacking area, you might isolate one area, but there's 2 challenges I would put in for combination play. One would be can you combine with a player who gives you the ball? So that might be a 1-2. Right, we're going to play a 1-2. It might be a play in an overlap, it might be a play in an underlap, it might be a play in and set for me to then go on and finish. It brings up those combinations, but instead of saying you've got to do this combination, it's can you combine with a player who gives you the ball? You might say in midfield, can you combine with a player who gives you the ball? You then go to relate, restrict, reward. Do you want to go, right, if you combine with a player who gives you the ball and then we're going to score, it's worth 5. You might restrict it so you have to combine with someone who gave you the ball before we score, or it might just be saying try to do it. Then the other way you can flip it is then think about combine with a player who didn't give you the ball. Again, apologies for my horrendous writing. Now, if it's a player who didn't give you the ball, you might be looking more at little combinations for a 3rd man run. It might be playing a sideways pass, and then the next one looking for a forward through ball. It might be someone playing in for you to then set for someone else to run onto it. But it gives you different ways to look at combinations without you being too prescriptive, and it gets players to think about the types of combinations they could use. There's loads more we can go into about like skills, width, depth, a bit more about creating width and space. There's so much we could go through. So if you've got anything else you want sessions on or any ideas, drop it in the comments or messages, and we'll try and get some more content out like that. What will happen with this, well, it's obviously going to be on our social media as well, so if you want to watch it back, It will be on our social channels and on the Coaches Club. We're going to spend the rest of this month working on playing through the thirds and drip feeding out loads of free content as well as some kind of more exclusive stuff. And at the end of the month, we're going to bring all this information and content together to do a webinar on playing through the thirds. That webinar will be free, so you can look on the Coaches Club to access that. So remember Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify podcasts, Apple podcasts as well. And we'll have loads more stuff, and this will all be combined at the end into a masterclass, so you've got loads and loads of resources. Please share everything we're doing with people. Please share it on your socials. It really helps us out and allows us to do more and more free stuff like this. Thanks for watching. Hopefully that was useful.